All right. So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to the online open house, specifically talking today about the MFA in illustration. And we have 3 faculty members here who will introduce themselves after I just quickly. You guys know me, Molly from Graduate Admissions. And we'll start with Caleb. Want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Caleb Brown. I'm the graduate program director. I also teach in the program, teach studio classes for the grads, as well as teaching in the undergraduate program.
Awesome. Okay.
Welcome.
Andrea?
Hi, my name is Andrea Dezo. I'm a professor at RISD. I teach also graduates and undergraduates, and I'm very excited to be here with all of you.
Thank you. And Eric.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Telford. I'm the department head of illustration. I teach both in undergrad and graduate department, and I'm happy to meet with you all this morning.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And the way that we are formatting this session today, everybody that is joining us, is really an open Q&A session. I'm going to allow Caleb and Eric and Andrea to kind of talk about the program a little bit, the curriculum and why we created this program, because we created it with the intent of it not being the same thing as our undergraduate program, which most people know very well. So Caleb, why don't we start with just an introduction, maybe some images, and everybody that is visiting here, please put your questions in the Q&A portion of Zoom, and so we can go through them and answer everybody. And you can start putting those questions in right away, questions that you have about the curriculum, questions that you have about your portfolio, anything like that, admissions, financial aid. That's what we're here to do. Let's dig in. So Caleb, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly. I think our program is now in its second year. And some of the, I could just talk a little bit about some of the defining aspects of the program, which we feel kind of set it apart from other MFAs in illustration. One is a strong social engagement component. So one of the things that we want to focus on is how you can develop your work, your vision, and channel that into in one way or another, contributing to the common good, and that can be and seeing the students work and working with them over the past year and a half. The range of how that is addressed is very open. So in other words, it can be that aspect of the program can be by direct activism, by working with organizations, by channeling your work directly towards certain causes, or in smaller ways. It can be integrated into the work that you want to create, whether it's comics or children's books or graphic novels, etc. So there's a number of ways in which that's addressed and can be worked with within the program. Another kind of important aspect of the program is examination of the field itself, looking critically at illustration, its history, where it's going, where it could be going, and a kind of a forward-looking examination of what illustration is and what it could be. There's a strong focus on digging in and experimentation and exploration along the way, sort of perhaps putting aside some of the expectations or work that you've come into, and really push yourself, really push your work forward. So it's really exciting to see the work that's coming out of the program. I could share some images of some student work real quick, if that's okay. Let me just pull up some current work. So we have students. Let me share my screen. So the breadth of the work being created is really really inspiring. Let me see if I can. Sorry, can you give me maybe we could I'm gonna need a second to make sure I'm sharing the correct group of work.
Mhm.
Perhaps we could just, if you want to give me a minute, I'll pull that up.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
I did put the link to the MFA and Illustration website, which was made for this program. So you can really see what a lot of what Caleb was talking about mirrored there. But I also wanted to just say, if you guys are open to it, raise your hand and you can just ask your question out loud to the group. It makes it feel a little less disassociated with Zoom. So if you're open to that, you can always raise your hand and ask one of these faculty members a question directly. So as Caleb works on that, Eric, do you want to keep going or Andrea?
Yeah, I'm just, I'm having trouble with access for sharing, but yeah, if you could just continue for a second, I'll try to fix this.
Okay.
Andrew, do you want to go? Do you?
Actually, we have a question if we want to just dive into that, which
Sure.
we
probably
can-
answered. So the question is, how do you all think about AI as it relates to the field of illustration? Do you embrace it as a tool, or is this something to be fought against?
Oh, I think the sort of collaboration between Illustrator and AI is inevitable, and I think it's at this point inescapable. You know, RISD itself is still sort of having healthy debates between departments about how AI affects each of their practices. Here in illustration, you know, a large part of what defines the illustration program at RISD is this idea of empowering students to be able to author their own work, right? Rather than sort of conform to popular culture or vocational practices. And at the same time, I think that, so as somebody who works in, you can see my work against the wall here, I work in a range of practices within illustration. The main concept for me is really character design. And there's a lot of people in the industry right now who are still trying to, you know, wrap their minds around, well, where does AI solve efficiency problems? And where is AI not effective in being able to conceptualize things, right? Because what AI does is it basically takes an aggregate of ideas that have already been done before and sort of spits out a variety of them. So based on the conversations I've had with leading people in the industry doesn't know what it's going to do with AI, right? So, and beyond the art part, some of this is driven by money, you know, money and efficiency and money and processes and so on and so forth. So I think, long story short, short story long, I would say that RISD illustration department is very open to the conversation of how AI can be implemented in making work. However, the one thing that students have to sort of negotiate themselves is the fact that our program, the fabric of our program, is based on original concepts. It's based on students being able to author their own work, really take their creations and expand upon those ideas. And so if you're someone who has ideas, new ideas, I think it'll be easier for you to be able to set boundaries for how much you'll allow AI to kind of infiltrate the work and sort of disrupt your own creative process. And I think if you're not the kind of person where concepts come to you easily, you might be someone who can use AI as sort of a starting point to then create and generate your own new ideas. So as someone who, again, I'm still investigating AI myself and trying to see where it fits in the curriculum, I think the department has been very, very open to seeing the possibilities. However, I do not think you know, a Terminator 2 situation is going to happen where AI basically collapses all art, society, and illustration basically goes by the wayside. So I don't think it's as dire and apocalyptic as some of the articles may say, at least in practice, at least in terms of what at least in observation in the last couple of years, as sort of the conversation has been sort of gaining ground. I don't know if Andrea and Caleb wants to add anything to that.
I just want to, yes, what all that Eric said, I also completely subscribe to and agree with. But also, I wanted to mention that we very strongly encourage thoughtful engagement with any kind of medium and any kind of tool from our students, that people have to say something, have to have something to say, and they have to be able to experiment and find their own voice in with all the old and new tools and media that are available to them, and find the best one for what they have to say and what they want to do. And I personally am not opposed to experimenting with digital media. I actually use quite a bit of digital media, mainly in fabricating and experimenting with materials. However, the kind of just making things with AI because of the novelty of it is something that is going to be new for a little while. And then what's going to be interesting is where do people who are engaging with more than just a look or more than just a style or a mood, where are they going to take it? Are they going to continue to engage with it and experiment with it or not? There's a lot of interesting possibilities, and I feel that we are just really at the beginning of a much longer journey of where this can go. And I feel that the way we engage with all our materials and media applies here too, that we engage in a thoughtful way and we are trying to say something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say I agree with both Andrea and Eric. It's not the same thing, but I think there's an analogy to be made. At one point years ago, there was with the rise of stock illustration houses and the large libraries that were being built for stock illustration, there were feelings that, oh, this is going to really destroy editorial illustration, and especially editorial and things like commissioned book covers and things like that. But after a while, I mean, that library ages. It feels like it dates itself, and I'm kind of almost seeing that with a lot of the AI work as a rendering tool. There is a sameness and there is a novelty to it, as Andrea noted, that I think will have to be that will pass in and of itself. I mean, I'm sure it's going to advance, and there are problems there, but I agree that you still have to generate ideas, and it's still, is not a solution for creating interesting imagery.
Yeah, and the only thing that I wanted to add to this conversation is that we have actually come out with a admissions policy in AI, and how that impacts, going back to what Eric said, authorship, especially at the graduate level. I think students, if you're using it like Andrew said, that like as a novelty and you're not putting in the work, just allowing AI to do things for you, then that's a problem for us in admissions. And we want to make sure that the work is authentic to you. Not that you can't use AI as a medium, but it has to be noted, and it cannot be, presented as if it is your own work if you're using a different tool. I hope that makes sense. It's much more clear at the undergraduate level because they have very clear guidelines for what they want in the portfolio. And at the graduate level, I think it's just really important to make sure that you're identifying the medium that you're using and how you're using it, using context, right? And we actually have the next question, if we could just dive into the portfolio, because a lot of people have this question, is what are you guys looking for in a graduate portfolio for illustration?
we're really looking for your best work. We're looking for original, thoughtful work. It can be, we're not looking for a particular media or a particular kind of approach, but really what you consider the most important work you're making that represents the ideas that you're working with.
What if they're coming from different backgrounds, different areas, maybe not even in the fine arts?
Well, I'm going to show in a minute. I solved this access problem.
cool.
I can show some images that might be able to speak to that. But we have grads from a number of different backgrounds, not just from a BFA, not just from a fine arts or illustration undergraduate background, but from social sciences, from hard sciences, and from other kinds of bachelor undergrad degrees. And it really has really added to the richness of the work being created by the cohort. Cohorts.
Anything to add to that?
I think you're muted, Andrew. I think you're muted, Andrea. Sorry.
Sorry, thank you. I think Caleb put it very concisely. I would love to see the work, so maybe there's like some kind of idea for students to see what a wide breadth of work we have currently.
Hey, I'll share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah.
This is just some work from the second years, our cohort, which is in its second year. Can you all see this? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
So this is an installation by one of our grads who, speaking of sort of diverse backgrounds and different kinds of experiences that our grads are bringing to the program. This student had a background in agriculture, in sustainable farming, years of experience working on different farms and with the land in different ways, and is here incorporating photography and cyanotype, printing, and working with a bank of images that she photos that she took during her years working in various places on farming and working with agriculture, sustainable agriculture. This is just a detail from one of our students who has really working with some interesting materials. This is frames from a hand-painted animation, but this student is also really interested, comes from a science background, and is really interested in sort of natural processes and how materials like glass, how animation can be translated into different sort of unexpected materials, and has done installation work using projection, using painting on sort of untraditional materials, and sort of creating experiences. This is Angie Zoe, who's a painter, works a large scale oil on canvas, acrylic on canvas works. This is Simone Hedebe, who is working with issues around family and tradition, and working with African fabric traditions within African patterns and fabric making, and tying it to her own family history, autobiographical content. This is a student who also works three-dimensionally, and for last semester's studio project, created works around the artist Lee Bowery, really influential seminal performance art artist, and their life and their studio, essentially recreating their studio and work connected to their history and life. This was a really interesting project created by one of our grads that has to do with, it was a narrative sculptural work, interactive, essentially a piece of furniture that sort of transforms itself into a structure for a narrative conversation between two sisters who are separated, one remaining in the Philippines and one going abroad to work. And it was a really moving and rich piece of work that sort of comes to life when two participants sit on either side of it and read through a conversation translated from letters between two sisters who are separated in time and distance. This is Irene, a grad who's very interested in editorial work and picture books. And this is a frame, a page spread from a book that she created last term that has to do with distance in a different way. It's about a relationship with a parent and a sort of a conversation that goes on in her head as she travels and moves to different places around the world, actually, to study and to travel. So those are just a few pieces that give you a little taste of the kind of range of the work that students are engaging with. Again, there's really stretching, I think, the definitions of what illustration is, and pushing out into areas using printmaking, using animations, sculptural approaches, but many of them containing a very personal, a very rich narrative aspects to the work.
Thanks, Caleb. That was really great. I think it's nice you can only talk about it so much until you really can see it. And I'm sorry, I turned my camera off. I have a delinquent little bunny that likes to chew things over here in my place. So very cute, very delinquent. So the next question goes back to one of the first things that you said about the program, Caleb. And the question is, could you be more specific about working for the common good, especially as it relates to working in smaller ways with people or causes?
As I said, I think that how students engage with that idea, with that sort of framework, is incredibly varied. But I think one thing that is important is that ability to communicate something that's important to you is paired with a really important examination of your own work, of developing it, of pushing it into a personal place. I think sometimes we have students who have come to the program coming out sometimes of a somewhat established career within illustration. They may have been working professionally for a while and want to perhaps move away from a more commercial place within their work and move towards something that's both very personal in terms of authorship and the creative side, but through that can be channeled towards things that are important to the grad, that are happening in the world. Issues that could range from things that are happening on a large scale, or issues that they would want to perhaps embed organically in their work if they're interested in storytelling in different ways, narrative storytelling like children's books or comics or graphic novels or editorial illustration, even things like that.
Mm. And before we move on, I just want to say welcome to Susan and have you maybe introduce yourself. Thanks for coming.
I thought maybe Eric and Andrea, who are teaching the studio right now that focuses on social engagement, if there's anything that you wanted to add to that in terms of how students are applying their work to these broader kinds of focuses of the program?
Again, students in this class also are extremely diverse in their approach and in their materials and ideas and ways of engaging audiences. Some of our students in our current studio class, which has a public engagement component, are working with local organizations that serve local people, and through them create engagements with these communities. There's a student who is creating work with in collaboration with a home for elderly residents in Providence. There are students, there is a student who is working with a refugee center and working, actually two students work with two different refugee centers, or a center that helps Filipino refugees, and another organization that helps people who come from Syria and other places that have been affected by war. Other students have more individual kind of bringing out their individual authored work to the community without necessarily pairing with an organization. We have students who are more traditionally kind of thinking in an exhibition or kind of bringing out your work in the public sphere without an intermediary or without a particular organization, but just by themselves or with a local artist. The work is not yet completed. They are all very hard working on their projects. It's going to be presented in December. So we've seen a lot of in progress work, and they range from textile materials to digital interactive painting, toy making, and a lot of other pieces. Maybe Eric can talk a little more about it.
I think Andrea framed it quite well. The only thing I will add is that there's definitely a difference between this current second year cohort and the first year cohort, in that, you know, the second year cohort, many of them, I know there was a question earlier about people who might not have an art specific background. We have a number of students who don't necessarily come from an art specific background. And so I think it's reflected in some of their ideas and some of the things that they've been working on, which has been really interesting to see. I've been scanning some of the questions as well that we'll get to a little later. But I wanted to also add that what they've been able to do in the grad studio 3 class is also branch out within the RISD community, the academic community at RISD, to work with certain professors in other departments, not only illustration, to help bring some of their projects to life as well. So there's public engagement happening, but also some interdisciplinary work happening there as well. Susan, want to introduce yourself? Sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan. I teach in the program. My own interest areas are sort of the history of illustration and how that dovetails with public thought. And my own work is painting and printmaking. And so we cover a lot of materials-based things. I teach Grad Studio 1, which is really geared towards helping students get their footing at RISD and trying a bunch of different ways of working in the class, because it's it's impossible to take all the things that RISD has to offer in the short amount of time you're there. So in the studio, we experiment and then investigate color and formal mark making. So that's my my short answer.
I guess we can start answering some of these questions.
Yeah, let me bring up the next question here. And thanks. That was really thorough, you guys. I think that's really important to think about the smaller ways in which we can use Rhode Island sort of as a template or as like a focus group, right? And then take that out into the world. So thank you for that. And so the next question is a little bit more nuts and bolts. How are the semesters divided up? I've seen fall, winter, and spring. Just wondering how long each semester is, and also if the program always starts in the fall or have some students started in the spring. And I can help answer this as well, but if anybody else wants to jump in, that's fine too.
I can jump in on that. The 2 semesters, fall and spring, are longer semesters. They're 13 weeks and 14 weeks if you count the critique week. Winter session is a shorter term. It's basically 5.5 weeks long, and it's intended to give you a little respite and time to experiment outside of your main focus. No, students have not jumped into the program midway, and that's because the very first semester, as I mentioned, is about kind of getting your artistic chops working and trying new things. And then we move into focus on narrative in the second semester, which is, takes all kinds of different avenues and it explores sort of storytelling. And then we build upon that with the social engagement semester. And then the final 4th long semester is your own thesis work, which obviously involves bringing bringing your baby into the world and getting out there in the public eye somehow. So to jump in midstream, you would miss one of the major components.
Absolutely.
And we just don't think that works as well, especially since we have folks who maybe weren't art majors, but have always made art, and they bring another strength to the program. And it's really important to sort of build on a foundational first semester and then move through the program in a way that ties it all together.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that is to be said also with the rest of our programs. So there's opportunities to collaborate and to engage other students starting at the same time as you, orientation, a lot of programming, a lot of resources around that beginning of that fall semester. So that's how the majority of our programs start. There's no midway start. But the winter session is unique, and something that, RISD, I think, has long offered and been kind of a little bit of a respite for students, but also as opportunities to go cross collaboration, go abroad if you must. You only have 2 years here, so you have to choose carefully, choose wisely, I would say. Anyone else want to add to that, or otherwise we can move on? We have quite a few questions coming up here. So let's talk about research. Okay, so are there any graduate classes at RISD that pertain to research for illustrators? A lot of my work explores aesthetics and scenes from our shared history, but I find myself having a hard time actually researching these things beyond the surface, Pinteresty level. I think I know what it means. I have really been wondering about how to set and set and prop designers in film can produce such authentic and accurate spaces, and I'm really looking to gain these kinds of skills. And I need to put my glasses on.
Well, I think my fellow faculty may want to expand on this, but I think there are a lot of opportunities both within the program, required courses that deal with research, starting with a course in the first semester taught by Jeline Grove, which examines illustration from a critical and historical perspective. There is a class offered in the winter session of the first year that has to do with taking advantage of the really rich variety of special collections in Providence, starting with RISD's own library special collection and others at Brown, at the Athenaeum, and other places, and looking at their collections from a critical through a critical lens. There are also many other you have an elective that you can choose each term, and there's a lot of other opportunities for deepening that kind of investigation at RISD as well. I don't know if anybody wants to expand on that.
We also have an elective class that's specifically designed for graduate students, and it's designed for interdisciplinary classes of graduate students. So students from different departments and programs and interested and working with different media are enrolled in that class. It's called Making as Research, and it is looking at how various making modalities, both digital and analog, can be also part of an illustrator's research. We are thinking in this class, we are reading about how at various times in history, thinking about materials and thinking about making and thinking about making in particular and specific ways shaped people's thinking on a larger societal level, but also for design movements and illustration currents. And we collaborate with RISD Coworks, which is our digital fabrication space where students get trained on a large number of very exciting pieces of equipment, from complex embroidery machines to laser cutting and other machines like that. And then students propose projects around ideas and around materials that they have been experimenting with.
It's also worth noting that RISD has an apparel department, and they offer courses in the history of various costumes. So I see that in your question, but also our museum is a huge resource. They actually say they have a whole costume and history of fabrics department, and they have colonial rooms that have been salvaged from actual homes around Providence. And then the John Cutter Brown Library up at Brown is, if not the most well-known, one of the most well-known histories of the Americas repositories. And it has all authentic books about the history of the Americas, and you get to go take them out and touch them. And it's an amazing resource if you're looking for historic documentation. So that between the two, the university and RISD, there is a veritable treasure trove of firsthand research that you can do. And then there are the associated specialists who curate all of those areas. So there's a lot to look at and a lot to be researched in a very formal or informal way.
Yeah, it's an amazing resource that we have here that, you know, is just immeasurable. I don't know if you mentioned the special collections as well. That's another huge resource through the library, but also yeah, so museum, the library, lots of resources. You're going to see those main resources if you are coming to attend the in-person session on Friday, which I had a question in the chat about that. Is it just going to be a repeat of what we're doing here? And really Friday, I just wanted to throw this out there. If you haven't signed up, what it is on campus entirely. We're going to show you some main pieces of the campus, the nature lab, the library, the museum, and kind of wayfinding your way through the campus. I like to kind of show the underbelly of it and the kind of culture and vibe. But then you also have these breakout sessions. So you'll go out to your departmental spaces and shops. So someone's going to come pick you up from where all of it's kind of the same space. There people will be having a little continental breakfast and then going out on a resources tour and then getting picked up by the department. So we'll also have a student panel, open Q&A to current students to ask about their, you know, input, like authentic experiences as well. So
just one thing I wanted to add to that question was that the class that's offered in winter session, it's a really good class to teach you how to actually travel to places, traveling to archives and actually meeting people to sort of help you get to your end goal. And, you know, in that question where you talk about your practice that has to deal with sort of researching scenes and aesthetics, you're talking about location scouting, which is what filmmakers do quite a bit, which also involves the ethics of entering communities, because oftentimes they will go into communities where, you know, English is not the first language of the location that they're going to take photos in. And so there is a sort of way that you can respect, and also using cameras, right? Using cameras in in remote locations where you don't want the local community feeling as though there's some sort of exhibition getting, having their photos taken. So there's a lot of, there's quite a bit of work that goes into that I think you can learn in some of the classes at RISD, like the ethics of going into communities and then extracting information, and then how do you represent that information respectfully. So.
Mhm.
I think that ties into the next question too, about storyboarding and concept art sort of feeds into that. Eric, I know that concept art is probably one of your the focuses of your work, and you have a lot of experience and knowledge around that. And I think that is a place, it seems like, that concept art is a space where critical examination of its history and how it can be more ethical and in terms of its representation is an important thing, and it seems like an important discipline that for this kind of approach.
So the one thing I'll say is, if you're interested in a career in storyboarding or concept art, going to graduate school has to be purposeful, because I think there are a number of online platforms and other institutions that will prepare you to enter that market if you're looking to basically sort of do the job. If you're trying to be a part of the sort of machine that is that space, I think there are many other schools that would quite honestly better serve your time. However, I do think that if you are coming from a concept art world, or if you come from an undergraduate program that really taught you those trade processes, and you're looking to sort of further examine how those trade processes are sort of socially engineering generations negatively and go back and sort of change the system, I think a graduate program like this would be appropriate, because even in the undergraduate level, I teach a class called character creation, and we talk about character design, and we talk about semiotics, social semiotics, and we study some of the semioticians and some of their ideas on how to get the public to change the meanings of certain symbols. And I think that's an area that is really missing right now in the industry. And as we become more socially conscious, and as we start engaging more and more in debate, and now that video games and films aren't this sort of niche thing that's sort of left alone, it is starting to come to the forefront of how we're sort of, again, socially engineering, and sort of how are we affecting and influencing design, right? So I think if you're looking for like a trade school, I don't think RISD would be the best use of your time. Hell, we could have a conversation and then we can turn $12,000 into a very lucrative career like that. However, I do think that the trade-off is that in about 5 or 7 years, those particular skills might not be viable, might not be the most important. What will be there is someone who develops a really good taste in looking at art and looking at images, and being able to make decisions that will positively affect the people who sort of consume this, right? So RISD's not looking to kind of go with the crowd and be a part of that world that produces artists who continue perpetuating some of these like really damaging and negative stereotypes within popular media. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was really, really thorough, and I think accurate. It's about fit. And if this is what you want in your end goal, then that's what you have to look at when you're applying to different kinds of programs, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now I just want to say to our audience, keep putting the questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. We have a bit of time left here, so we can answer all of your questions, hopefully all of them. Next one is, can you talk a little more about in detail how the curriculum works? For instance, Fall 1 Studio's description is vague on the website. Is it student driven or is it project based?
That in terms of Studio One, I believe it's both. But Susan, since you teach the class, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
So the course starts out with a couple 2-week exercises. One is to build an archive of things that you're looking at and to experiment with mark making. And that means to really think about how line, texture, tone, value impact the way someone reads an image. And so you do some research, and then you also do some experiments, and you create studies based on that research. And then we move into a color module, and a lot of people have worked in color and some folks haven't. We investigate different kinds of palettes from a theoretical and from a practical point of view. And then we merge those things together in a longer assignment where the students themselves generate a project that lasts for 5.5 weeks. And in between every single week, at the end of the class, we do a demo of a certain material, and the students experiment with those materials and collaborate, somehow bringing all of that practice together in smaller exercises that don't really, they're not expected to be embedded in the final project, but they're just a chance to try new materials. So silkscreen or risograph or lino cut. So it's just basically a little bit of boot camp along with skill building and personal archaeology. So that's what it's about. At the same time, you're studying, cultural theorists, and you're reading some really important ideas about how visual culture works in your seminar. So those things kind of go back and forth across the boundary.
The structure of Studio 2 in the spring semester of the first year is somewhat similar in terms of Andrea and I teach this class, and we start out with the first 3 or 4 weeks with some exercises. The semester and this studio is focused on narrative, so the students work on some exercises, 1-week exercises in which they sort of extract narrative from different processes or different activities. It could be working with an object that bears some importance for them, or a kind of a journalistic approach, documenting a day, or going out into sort of fields of information that exist out in the world, beyond the sort of established ones that we talked about, like special collections. This is more about sort of finding a kind of a randomized field in order to draw out impressions and elements to work with it in a narrative. And then after those exercises, the remaining weeks are devoted to a self-generated large project that involves a narrative in some way.
And Studio 3, which Eric, myself, and Dylan DeWitt are teaching this semester, is structured in a way that at the beginning of the class, we are bringing in guest lecturers, guest artists, basically, who talk about their own practice in a wide range of approaches in the public engagement field, art and public engagement. And these initial weeks of students being exposed to practitioners who work in the area of art that they are going to learn about. Then a few weeks into the semester, they start working on their own projects, which they work on for the rest of the semester. We have readings and discussions and individual and group critics with the students, and the end of the semester is culminating in a large all-out crit where we bring in guest critics, guest artists, some of whom have seen the students' work before, some of whom have not. And we do a big event where students show their work, the work is talked about, and people get to meet people who are not necessarily their teachers, actually interact with the work.
Excellent. And we have one last question here, which I am just going to read directly. Hi, I had a question. As a student of cultural studies, what sort of scope would such a degree offer? This is a basic question, but it irked me out. So I'm not sure what that means, but
Hmm.
maybe you could add a
I'm
little
not
more
sure I'm
context.
understanding the question, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not quite understanding either. Maybe this anonymous attendee could retype that question just to give us some context to how you're asking it. And we'll move on to the next one while that happens. How strict is the 2 years of active practice in visual communication with a demonstrable professional or practical experience beyond the undergraduate degree for admissions? I'm currently finishing up a 5-year architecture undergrad, and while I have done some posters and children's books, that 2 years makes me nervous.
I guess I would say, and my colleagues can correct me, but your portfolio and your statement will speak volumes to represent you and the work that you're looking to do. And I think between the work and the written materials, we try to gauge the maturity level of the ideas of the person applying. I think for admissions, the requirements that we sort of place are really sort of the ideal situation, but not the end all be all. Every now and then you'll find a particular candidate who basically stands above the rest, like sort of an outlier, and succeeds, and does well. So I wouldn't be nervous about that. I would apply if you really feel that the program has the potential to offer you something unique, challenging, something that will allow you to engage with your practice, something that will make you grow from it, then I think it's worth applying. I think most opportunities, such as this, or even a grant or a residency opportunity, it's if you have an inkling that, you know what, this might be something that's good for me, apply. Right.
Yeah, I would add it's not strict. I agree with Eric. And in your comment, you said you've done some posters and children's books. Some children, I mean, the fact that the children's books is plural, I mean, that could form a foundation for a portfolio, as well as some other graphic works. You said posters, etc. So, yeah, the work will certainly speak for you, and as well as how you articulate what you want to achieve from the program and why our program in particular is really important to communicate, because there are a number of illustration MFAs to choose from. Why RISD?
Yeah, I mean that's the most critical thing, right? Is I wanted to say all of that as well. Is like the portfolio comes first, statement of purpose. We really need to see like where we don't know your lived experience. So, and you don't know if you are ready until unless you apply and get in, right? So it's kind of tricky. But I will say that we do have a couple of portfolio days coming up. They're both online, which you can sign up for on our website, and I'll put a link here. If you're like, hey, is my portfolio, where do I need work, or am I ready? General feedback, it's sometimes a lot of times just validating what you're doing, right? Have that kind of imposter syndrome of coming from a different area. It happens all the time at the graduate level. So let me give you that link here for that. And I also just wanted to say, like, the conversation doesn't end here. This is really just the beginning. So yeah, we're going to have a lot more sessions. Actually, the very next session that we have online for our online open house is with careers. So if you had some questions today about careers, you can sign up for that session. It starts at 11:30. Let me go ahead and put the link to where you can sign up for everything, including the portfolio days. So yeah, absolutely. If you think you're ready, apply, but we have to understand why RISD, right? Why now, and why RISD illustration specifically in that statement of purpose. Anybody have anything else to add to that?
Hey, I noticed the question was reframed about,
Oh.
cultural theory, and I want to say thank you for doing that. That was very nice of you to reframe your question. And I want to just say that it makes you seem like the perfect kind of candidate. I mean, basically what we're looking at is how images impact the way people see themselves and see each other, and that's one of the strengths and kind of responsibilities of being out in the public sphere with your images. And so if you've got a background in the social sciences, you're already thinking about how society knits itself together, and image making is very influential. And that's one of the things we talk about, and why we pair the seminars with the studios in a very thoughtful way, is to help artists see their work not only as an extension of themselves, but that they are an extension and part of a community, and that they have a responsibility to think about those things when you're making your art. So bravo for restating that question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really helpful. Again, I just put the admissions email address there. Any other questions that you have that kind of pop up as you go along through the application process, or as you go through these resources or different sessions that we're offering, questions about Friday, the in-person event, shoot us an email at admissions@risd.edu. And thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. Thanks to the faculty. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, answer questions.
Thank you all.
Bye now. Have a good day.